Hey guys, I'm here with Sinnful. How are you today?
I am blessed today.
Me too.
Awesome. How are you?
I'm well.
Good.
You look beautiful.
Thank you. So do you.
Thank you.
Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. It's funny because we were starting to talk and then I'm like, no, to just stop because this is so good. It's good stuff. So you work a 12-step program. We were just talking about like speaking at meetings.
Yes.
And you were saying that you like intentionally will go to meetings where it's like a podium or a lot of people just to like push through that uncomfortableness.
Yes. So what I've learned in recovery, a big process of recovery is uncomfortability, right? And normally when I'm feeling extremely comfortable or complacent, I tend to get stagnant. And so I try to put myself in situations where I do feel uncomfortable, because the more I do it, the more repetitive I am, and the more consistent I am, that uncomfortability tends to fade.
Yeah.
So when it comes to meetings and sharing, I end up finding myself at meetings with a lovely podium that you get to walk up to in front of a crowd of people.
Yeah.
And it's an instant adrenaline rush. You know, my anxiety goes up, my heart starts racing, and then this thing just starts to, spin and spin and tell me, what are you going to say? And then I try to map out this like phenomenal speech. So that way I sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And by the time I get up to that podium, most of the time I'm just blank.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, here we go. I just wing it most of the time.
Yeah.
But the reason why I do that, even when I am feeling uncomfortable, or let's say my head's telling me I don't want to share, I had a sponsor tell me years ago, we were at a Cooper meeting, and Cooper Fellowship was a treatment center in Orange County. And they had a Wednesday night meeting, and it was outside, and this meeting would get packed, like talking 50, 60 plus people, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And my sponsor was sitting next to me, and she was nudging me. She was like, go share, go share. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to share. Like, why would I want to get up and share? I have absolutely nothing to say right now.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she goes, Brittany, it's not fucking about you. It has to do with the person in the room that's going to identify with what you have to say.
Yeah.
And like, it put into perspective for me at that second. It was extremely humbling for me. And I remember thinking it's really not about me anymore, because this whole 12-step program and AA, or whatever program that you're working, it's a selfless program. And how selfish of me to not want to get up there and share because I'm in my feelings.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling a certain kind of way.
Yeah.
When I don't know how anybody else in the room is feeling. What if somebody's like borderline about to go out and relapse? And what if they did relapse? What if they died? And not that would be my issue to carry, because everybody is obviously in charge of their own choices. But if I can get out there and carry the message, which is what we are supposed to do in recovery, is, once completed all 12 steps, had a spiritual awakening as a result of the 12 steps, we carry the message to the alcoholic that still suffers in and out of the rooms.
Yeah.
So that's my duty, as I feel, as a woman in recovery, is to get up and carry the message regardless of how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Because that's how this works. If nobody gets up to share what it was like, what happened, what did they do to get to where they are today, nobody's going to stick around.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to try. In a sense, it's like you're that vision of hope for these people that feel completely hopeless. Because being in recovery, and I'm sure you can relate, when we first get here, we're broken.
Yeah.
We're broken. We're lost. We're beaten. We're battered. We're shattered. And normally we have exhausted all options. 9 times out of 10 we have. I mean, sometimes we're here because people were forced, whether that be by the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the mom, the dad, the courts, CPS, whatever. And but if we can just maybe plant that seed, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we can make a difference in somebody's life.
Absolutely. Perfectly stated. I feel like we could just boom, drop the mic and walk out right now, because that was like flawless. But it's so true. And everything you said is so true. And, we need to just get out of our own way.
Yes.
And that's so hard to do. And especially in early recovery. And that was my thing too. Like when I first got sober, I'd go over, and I didn't know treatment. I didn't know 12 steps. I didn't know any of that because I didn't hang out with anybody that was a drug addict. Like I was very secretive. I was isolating, and I had this different life. And so I didn't understand like what a 12-step meeting was, but I just knew I was supposed to go. And I sat outside of the Costa Mesa Lana Club for like 2 months, and I couldn't even get myself through the front door because I was just like overridden with so much anxiety and what are they going to think of me? And are they going to judge me? And this whole thing, you know, that just dialogue that was just all negative. And yeah, it's really not about us, and being able to get past that and try to go help somebody else. That makes all the difference, you know, and I really got into service and helping others. Like everything changed for me, you know, being able to find that gratitude and be humble is such a key thing in recovery.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's amazing. I did a speech at an event I went to like 3 years ago in Utah, and I was asked to speak about recovery and social media. And so I agreed, even though I was like terrified to go do it because there was going to be like 100+ people, and I don't like speaking in big crowds. And I had this whole speech, right? The whole thing, I had it all on these cue cards, and I was speaking on the last day. So it was like the 4th day of this event. And the first 3 days were like miserable because I was just obsessing on it. Like, oh my God, what if I pass out? What if I start hyperventilating? Like this whole thing. And this is with like 3.5 years sober. I'm feeling this way. But anyways, I got up, and like you said, like I forgot all of it, but my higher power just took over. And I said what I needed to say, you know, and that's how I try to lead. That's why I don't script these podcasts in any way. You know, it's like whatever is meant to be talked about, whatever God puts on our heart to talk about. Yeah. You know, we're going to talk about. And I always trip, like it's such a blessing that we're even sitting here doing this today.
Absolutely.
From like where we came from to now. Like I would never look at you and go, oh, you know, she was a drug addict or an alcoholic or, you know what I mean? Like, and people, there's such a stigma surrounding that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, again, you're amazing. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you for having me.
So you've been sober for 4 years.
4.5 years.
4.5 years.
I picked up 4 years on May 31st of this year. So
okay, right
my
on.
sobriety date this time is May 31st, 2019.
Okay.
I have been in and out of recovery since I was 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
So without giving my age,
I know.
that's over half my life. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
And I came from a relatively normal family. You know, my parents don't drink and do drugs.
From here or?
From Orange County.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Fullerton.
Okay.
Right around the corner from Wood Glen, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, you know, I had a really good upbringing. My parents paid money for me to go to private school. We went on vacations. Pretty much anything that I asked for, I wanted. Anything that I asked for, I got. And my parents did their best. You know, they don't drink, they don't do drugs. My siblings don't drink or do drugs. And then there was me. And I was never able to find a happy medium. Brittany was either very, very, very happy, or I was very, very, very sad, very manic.
Okay.
And I hit my teenage years, and obviously hormones are going, emotions are all over the place, and I fell into this victim mentality, and I found a way to break apart my upbringing and micromanage, because obviously no family is perfect, right? And I can pick the tiniest little problem out and be like, oh, well, if you had an upbringing like me, you would get loaded too.
For sure. I did the same.
Yeah. And so, you know, I started smoking weed when I was maybe 14 years old, and that worked for a little while. And then it got boring. And where I grew up, everybody that smoked weed also did meth. And I'll never forget the first time I took that first hit, I was complete. I was complete. I was on top of the world. I knew at that moment that I wanted to feel that way every single day for the rest of my life. I know it talks about it in the big book where they say, I have arrived. I had arrived that day. And
you were how old?
I was 15 at that point. And I was a sophomore, a sophomore or junior or something like that in high school. I went to Mater Dei, actually. My parents paid for me to go to Mater Dei High School. I graduated there in 2007. And, but I remember liking that feeling.
Well, hold on. Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Of course.
So that's like a very, you know, well-to-do, nice school, right?
Is.
So how did you get into a crowd at 15 smoking meth?
So I got picked on a lot in elementary school. And by the time so the elementary school that I went to, it was kindergarten through 8th grade, right? So I went to the same school for that whole time. And by the time I graduated 8th grade, I told myself that I wasn't going to take anyone's shit. I made up my mind. Nobody was going to push me away. And I had already decided prior to going to Mater Dei that I was not like any of the people there. Everybody that was there was rich. They were snobby. They had nothing in common with me because I had this terrible life and I was just an ungrateful little shit. And so since I already had that mindset in place, I had no interest in really hanging out with anybody at my high school.
Got it.
I mean, I'd be nice. I'd make acquaintances and, you know, I knew a lot of people, but as far as like establishing friendships and relationships really at that school, I didn't. But I hung out with the people that were in my neighborhood at home.
Okay.
And I remember going to school and I couldn't wait to get home. I couldn't wait to get home because then I could go home, I could drop my stuff off, and then I can go kick it at the homie's pad right around the corner.
Got it. Yeah.
And that's where I would spend most of my time. So that's how I kind of got involved in that scene.
Yeah.
And then when I got into that scene, I loved that scene. And then it just gave me another reason to disassociate myself and distance myself from everyone at my school even more.
Yeah.
You know, nobody at my school does drugs. Or maybe they smoke weed, but they don't do meth.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes me different from you. And so I did that and I started getting high. And I remember loving that feeling so much, it scared me. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what consequences were going to come, but I knew I loved it so much that it was bad because I knew that I would do anything to feel that way.
Yeah. But you continued to do it all the time, even though you had.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I did. And I didn't really have any consequences. So, you know, that's the funny thing about addicts and alcoholics. I mean, even today, if I could slam meth and heroin like a lady and not have any consequences, I absolutely would.
Me too.
But unfortunately, the consequences go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
That just isn't an option for me or for us. And but at the time, I didn't really have any consequences. And I ended up, my poor mom, God bless my mom. She ended up finding out that I was getting loaded, and I was checked into an adolescent treatment center, Chapman Medical Center, in Orange. And I stayed there for 5.5 weeks. I AWOL'd or left after 5 days and came back sober. The guy didn't even get me high. I was super bummed. It was this thing about him being an adult and I was a minor, and my mom ended up calling him and threatening him, and he got like super like spooked, as he should have.
Yeah.
Because I had no business being with that man at that time anyway. And so he took me back to the treatment center, and I ended up completing. And during that time, I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous, and they told me to get this thing called a sponsor. You know, they told me to work these things called the steps. They told me I needed to go to meetings, and I completed the treatment center. I went home, and that's what I did. You know, I got a sponsor, and I worked these steps, kind of. I thought it was to the best of my ability at that point in time.
Because you're what, 16?
Yeah, I'm 16 at that time.
Yeah.
And I did them as well as a 16-year-old could.
Right.
For the time. And I remember my sponsor. We finished step 12. Right. And I remember she's sitting across the table, like me and you are. And she looks at me and she goes, yes, like now you can go help other women. And she's like so excited and like, can't believe it. And I just remember looking at her like, why would I want to go help somebody? I'm like, especially another woman. Like the last thing I want to do is go help another female.
Yeah.
Like, no. Don't you know there's this cute guy that's sitting at the end of the coffee bar over at the meeting place when the meeting place was still around, and I can be giving my attention to him. That's what I want to be doing. I got no business helping nobody else.
Yeah.
So I couldn't comprehend that. And that's what I did. I found me a him at the coffee bar, and this him was new in recovery too. And we were going to be the difference in the world. We were going to ride off into the sunset and get married and live this happily ever after.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting pregnant with my oldest daughter. I was 18 years old and ended up marrying that man. And gave birth to a healthy, beautiful little girl. And everything was great. During this time, I stopped going to meetings. I stopped working with a sponsor. You know, and they say in the program too, you know, just because you complete all 12 steps doesn't mean you're done.
Right.
It's an active program of recovery for the rest of our lives, right? There's no quote unquote cure.
Right.
It's not like you can just work the 12 steps and it's like, poof, you're no longer an addict.
Right.
Or, poof, you're no longer an alcoholic. It just
we wish.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
So I stopped using any tools that I had learned, which I didn't realize they were tools at the time. You know, lost contact with my sponsor, wasn't working any steps, wasn't going to meetings, and definitely was not of service to anybody. And this man decided to make a decision that he wanted to get loaded. And here I am, an addict that's left with no defense.
Yeah.
You know, and don't you know, you're not going to go get loaded and go party and have a good time. And I'm going to sit at home and be the good mom.
Right.
And I'm going to sit at home and twiddle my thumbs and wait for you to come home when I have to be sober.
Yeah.
And you're going to go out and fucking party.
Yeah.
Not fucking happening. And that's exactly what didn't happen. You know, so I ended up giving up that little bit of time that I had. And that's when I entered my rave scene.
Okay.
You know, we started going to raves and
Yeah.
started messing with, you know, ecstasy, acid, ketamine, shrooms. I did a lot of drugs that I had never attempted. It was a lot of my firsts. And, but I justified it by, I'm not doing meth.
Yeah.
Because none of those other drugs gave me the same effect. I mean, obviously I enjoyed taking them. It was a nice time. But they didn't quite give me the euphoria that I received from methamphetamine.
Yeah. I did the same thing. I thought I could, you know, drink alcohol.
Yeah.
And just not do my drug of choice, right? Oh, I'll just do it. And it wasn't as good. I'm like, okay, you know, the rationalizing in your head. So
Yeah.
I totally understand
Yeah,
that.
like I can moderate this.
Yeah,
I can manage this.
Yeah.
And then obviously, you know, smoking weed was in there as well. And the fighting really started to get worse. And the fighting between me and him had happened prior to having our daughter. But obviously you have two people that are getting loaded and,
Yeah.
you know, fighting just comes with the territory. And when our daughter was about 9 months old, him and I had gone to, well, my ex-husband and I had gone to a rave, partied all night, up all night. And we got into an argument and we argued about this specific situation for probably, I think it was like the third day, nonstop arguing. So I'm coming off of drugs. I'm exhausted from fighting.
Yeah.
I'm mentally just completely checked out. I'm just done and I can't do it anymore. And I ended up snapping that morning and I took off from the house and he came chasing after me and I ran out in the middle of traffic. I wasn't necessarily trying to kill myself, but I really didn't give a fuck what happened. I just wanted to get away from him. And he followed me, and where I lived, we lived next to a National Guard. And they saw me, you know, running into traffic and how upset I was, and they pulled me in and they ended up 5150 me that day. And at that point in my life, like I had dabbled with drugs, but I knew nothing of the street life or had any sense of street smarts. And so when I went to the hospital, they took my urine and I tested positive for a bunch of everything in there. And they ended up calling CPS. And as a result, they ended up taking that little girl, you know, from him and I. And you'd think that that would be enough to get me to get my shit together, right? And unfortunately, you're not looking at Mom of the Year here.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, my disease will consume me, everyone around me, and I will choose to get loaded over any and everything, you know. And that's what I did. I chose to stay with that man, and they took her, and unfortunately, they felt it necessary and in the best interest of the child to grant my parents guardianship over her. So they didn't terminate our rights, but guardianship was granted to them. And during that time when CPS came, of course, don't you know, I used that as the excuse to continue to get high.
Right? Yeah.
And that's when meth was reintroduced to my life. And I wasn't just smoking meth at this time. I had started slamming. I was 19 years old, and let me tell you that I thought that I loved to smoke meth. Slamming it was a whole nother ball game for me. And I knew that feeling of I have really arrived took place, you know. And over the course of my story, and I mean, I can keep talking about the story. It was all shit. It's a progressive disease, right? And progressively gets worse and worse and worse over time. And even if you manage to accumulate sometime sober, if you're a true addict, I shouldn't say true addict. I should say if you're an addict of a hopeless variety, because there are people that can function, there are people that may or may not have the same or maybe less consequences than I do, and they can manage. That doesn't mean they're not an addict, but maybe they're not hopeless, right? Yeah. If you're an addict of a hopeless variety, even if you manage to get a little bit of time clean and sober, you're going to pick up where you left off if you decide to get loaded again. Yeah. And my history has proven that to me over and over and over again. It got to a point to where the party ceased to be a party and thus became a chore.
Yeah.
During that time, I discovered heroin as well. I like heroin. I like meth more. I like to do both of them at the same time. And unfortunately for myself, if I do heroin by itself, I tend to die.
Yeah.
As people claim. I don't really remember, but that's what they say. And
how many times did you overdose?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't normally remember.
What was your mindset like?
I want to do it again.
Yeah.
That was good. That I was really fucked up. I want to do that again.
And that just goes to show you the disease, right? Yeah. And like you said, the progression of it, because we were just talking about that this morning, that, you know, it sneaks up on us and we can never get overconfident. It doesn't matter how much time you have. And it does start, it is good at the beginning. It starts that way. And then it's not, because it's not reality and nothing we can do. We can make that maintainable and work in our lives. Like you said, if we could, we would.
Absolutely.
Right?
And it talks about that in the book also, about this invisible line, right? Where at some point in our drinking or using career, we cross this invisible line where there is no more return and we lose that sense of control. Any control whatsoever, we can no longer manage. That complete idea of powerless and unmanageability. And unless we manage to go through some sort of epiphany or some sort of spiritual awakening or psychic change, there's little hope for us.
Yeah.
We are fucked.
What do you say to people that say it's just a choice?
So that's a very controversial topic.
Right, yeah.
I'm in school currently to get my certification for drug and alcohol counseling.
Nice.
I'm a registered counselor currently, but to actually be certified. And what I've learned throughout that journey, there's a lot of contributing factors that go into that question. Is addiction a choice or is it not a choice, right? And for some people, I do believe it is a choice. But going back to the addict of a hopeless variety, I don't think it's a choice.
Yeah.
When you're actively using,
correct,
it is not a choice.
Yeah, I agree.
If you were to ask me today, do you have a choice? I absolutely have a choice because my body is no longer physically dependent on a substance, right?
Yeah.
But when you have somebody that is using, and let's say they're partying and they're having a good time, and then they continue to use, and then the habit develops and sets in, and you become physically and emotionally dependent on this, on this substance, then it's no longer a choice.
Yeah, I agree. I went to school. I don't know where you're going to school. I went to Cyprus.
Okay, I'm at Saddleback.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I got certified as well. And I remember going to that class where we were talking about that. And it was such a debate.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and also just the stigmas that surround, like, what do you think needs to change when we're talking about substance abuse and mental health?
Absolutely. And you have to consider a number of factors, and just a few that I can think of off the top of my head is if you're prone to addiction or alcoholism in a genetic sense, right? There's that. You have social factors, you have environmental factors, you also have cognitive factors, right? So depending on the individual, their past experiences, how they've been brought up, lessons that they've been taught, you don't know how their parents were, how their upbringing was, that can be influential as well. Combined with cognitive disorder of some point, may or may not be present.
Yeah.
Combined with, genetics, combined with other social factors, then you could have the recipe to have a full-blown alcoholic. But then you can also take that same scenario and, let's say, eliminate one of those factors, and then you have a person that's normal, that may be able to function. So it's very interesting. I used to be very closed-minded to that. I was always nope, it's a disease. Nope, it's not a choice. Because there's been plenty of times that I've gotten loaded against my will, right? There's been plenty of times where I've literally been sitting there fishing for a vein, crying, thinking to myself, screaming in my head, stop, you need to stop. This is bad. What are you doing? You're fucking your life up. You're throwing everything away. What are you doing? And I can't stop.
Yeah.
By the time I got sober in 2014, I had a warrant, and I had gone to visit my kids. I have two daughters, and at this point they were both with my parents, which was my higher power definitely doing what I couldn't do for myself. And because I had no business raising either of those two children at that time. And I remember going by my parents' house, and I remember I had to have been maybe 90 pounds, soaking wet. I'm a picker. So you get me in front of a mirror when I'm doing methamphetamine, I will pick every inch of my body if I can see it. So I have sores, I have track marks all up and down my body. I'm maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. And mind you, I think I look phenomenal.
Right.
And, just banging that look of death. And I go over to see my kids, and I remember my mom just looking at me with complete disgust and just shaking her head at me and just looking at me like, Brittany, when are you going to stop? And I looked at her and tears in my eyes, and I'm like, I can't. I can't. And I was tired. I was so tired, and I wanted to stop. But again, that complete feeling of powerlessness, completely powerless and unmanageable over my life, my addiction, everything that I was doing.
Yeah.
And, how I got from being at modern day with like my whole life ahead of me, opportunity at my feet, to losing both of my kids, being on the streets homeless with a needle in my arm, addicted to fucking methamphetamine. How did that even happen?
Yeah.
We don't mean for that to happen.
Right. We don't go out there and go, oh, you know what? I'm just going to do this.
Yeah. I didn't wake up thinking, you know what? Today's a great day to fuck my life up.
Yeah.
We never had that intention. But for some reason, when we're using, no matter how hard we try to keep it together, how good our intentions are, how hard we try to keep the pieces together. And then the more we try to keep the pieces together, everything just crumbles like quicksand underneath us, right? And until we end up drowning.
Yeah.
We end up drowning in it,
So getting sober, right? People talk about these bottoms. Oh, what was your bottom? And it's like, okay, there was 1,000 bottoms. And like you said, you've overdosed, you lost your kids, you were homeless, all these things, but we still keep digging that hole and digging and digging and digging. What was the final thing where you got sober the first time?
The first time, are you talking about when I was 15?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
When you got sober, you said
in 2014.
In 2014,
so that was my first time getting sober as an adult.
Okay.
And honestly, I had to go to treatment because it was a condition of my probation at the time.
Yeah.
So I had a warrant. I had to do a little bit of time. And I remember when I got taken in that evening, I remember feeling that sense of relief. I was sitting in the back of the cop car. I could stop running. I wasn't going to get loaded because I don't get loaded in jail. I knew a nap was coming, a very long nap. I knew some food was coming. And I kind of understood that concept of surrender, right? And I remember sitting in the back of the cop car, and it's done. I am being saved from myself, right? And so I went and I did my little bit of time. I had to get out and I had to go to treatment. And while I was in jail, I knew that I had a problem. And I wanted to do everything that I could do to fix it. And I had gone to Woodland before. And they, talked about this morning meditation, and they had us read the book. So the first thing that I did when I was busted was I got my hands on a big book, and I actually read the book. I read all of the book, not just bits and pieces, not just a chapter here, chapter there. I read it from cover to cover. And I read every morning, or said in my head, the little bit of morning meditation that I could remember from the first time I was there. And I stayed sober.
What was the morning meditation you would say every morning?
Oh, it's a lot.
It's a lot. I didn't know if it was like a third step prayer or something.
Well, the third step prayer is in it. The Woodland morning meditation, I love this meditation because it takes about 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
But it maybe 10 to 15 minutes depending on, how quickly you read. But it touches on all 12 steps. So it's a good it's a good kickstart to your day to help get your head in the proper mindset, right? So I could remember some of it, so I would read, what I could remember, and I just didn't get loaded when I was in jail. And then things started to happen for me. I called Woodland, and they were full, so I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a certain amount of time before I had to get into a program. My PO was going to violate me. And I want to say by the grace of God for me, this happened, but it was at the expense of 13 other people. They had I think it was... somebody came in with Suboxone in the treatment center. It was Suboxone or fentanyl. I can't remember which one it was. And 13 people got kicked out all at once.
Oh, wow.
And those 13 people had to leave for me to get a bed. And that kind of shed some light for me. Like, I've always believed in a higher power. I've always known my higher power was there for me and always done for me what I couldn't do for myself. And I felt like that moment was him kind of taking the wheel and just making shit happen for me, you know? And I went there and I was willing. For the first time in my life, I was willing. They told me to get a sponsor. I got a sponsor. They told me to work the steps. I worked the steps. They told me to hang out my coffee cup and make my bed every day and follow these stupid rules and go to these stupid groups. I fucking did it with flying colors. And I didn't give a hard time. I didn't question. I didn't hesitate, right? Because I knew that I was there. The only reason why I was there was because of every decision that I had ever fucking made. So if I really wanted to make a change, I better start listening to somebody else because clearly I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I got busy and I got into action. You know, I got my first little get well job at a telemarketing firm, and it was my get well job that I never got fired from. So I ended up being there for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And I got some things as a result of that. You know, I was able to get my own car. I got my first car that I paid for, that I financed. I was able to pay off the little bit of debt that I had. I was able to pay my bills. I finally was able to get a cell phone in my name. You know, not an Obama phone. I don't even know if Obama phones were a thing at that time. You know, like I was able to get those material things that the book talks about, you know, and I got hired on at 20 hours a week and I graduated Woodland and they upped me to 32 hours a week. And I just remember being so grateful for that job. And my life started to change. You know, I worked all 12 steps honestly and thoroughly to the best of my ability. I didn't omit anything. And I got some things. Yeah. And not only did I get the material things, because here's the kicker. The material things are great, right? And the promises promise us all of these things. And the promises say that we will get these things, right? Not some of these things, not maybe just a couple of things. We will get them. And I found peace of mind. You know, I was able to go in a room and have this thing be quiet. I was able to look in the mirror and be okay with the woman that I was seeing look back at me at that time. Yeah. And that was something that you could not put a price on.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't, there's no high that can top that. There's no price that you can pay to have that. Like, and it's something that you learn through experience. You know, I tell sponsees all the time, or I work in treatment, so even with my clients, I tell them, if I could just hand you what I know of this program and the blessings that have been given to me, if I could hand it to you on a silver platter, I would. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You have to experience it, right? So the bottom for me, then I had to go. I had the warrant and it was just time, so I was kind of forced, and it started to work for me, right? I'd like to tell you that I stayed sober after that. I managed to get almost 4 years of continuous sobriety at that time. And then I happened to meet another him. And the interesting thing about addiction is, you know, our disease manifests itself in other ways.
Absolutely.
You remove the drugs and the alcohol. Well, what else can I do alcoholically? How else is my disease going to manifest itself? And I did not know that I was extremely codependent, and I was still very broken, and I was still very insecure. And I really hadn't done as much work on myself as I thought I had did. And, you know, this gentleman came into my life, and I was on cloud 9, you know, and I stopped going to meetings and stopped sponsoring other women and stopped being of service and stopped, you know, working with my sponsor. And I say that repetitively because these are all tools that I've learned over time to be able to help me cope or fight my disease, right? And this gentleman made a decision that he was going to get loaded. And when that happened, I was left defenseless. And I went back to, instantly went back to that same mentality that I had when I was married. When he decided to get loaded, you're not going to get loaded, not me.
Yeah.
Again, you're not going to get loaded, not me. And I held on for a little bit. I white knuckled it for a little bit, but you know, the time just came where the bell went off. And I ended up giving up that time. But this time around, I didn't lose the things.
Okay.
So it didn't get as bad, not to say that it couldn't or wouldn't, but what I lost that time around was this last relapse. I was completely spiritually bankrupt.
Yeah, like what was your thought process like during that time?
I was a mess. I knew when I was using, I knew that I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I knew that I wasn't where God wanted me to be. I knew what I needed to do, and that was just to get sober and everything would be okay. But I have this little character defect. I have control issues, deep-seated and deep-rooted control issues. So I very much struggled with him not getting sober when that's all I wanted was for him to be sober. And when Brittany doesn't get her way, I do everything that I can do to get my way. And normally I'm very good at it, and normally I make it happen. And but I had to learn through this process that it didn't matter how much I begged, didn't matter how much I pleaded, didn't matter how much I coerced, I bargained, I tried to manipulate. It did not matter what I did. This man was not going to get sober until he wanted to get sober. And I had to come to accept that. And it put me through a lot of pain. I put myself through a lot of pain during that time. And I finally got to a point where, you know, we're both loaded and we're arguing and we're fighting about getting loaded. And I remember thinking to myself, if I love this man and there's anything that, if I want any chance at this relationship possibly working, one of us has to get sober because we're going to end up not being together. Yeah. Doing this same bullshit. And I knew that man wasn't going to get sober at that time. So I made a decision to get sober. And it was different this time. It was different because I wasn't being forced to get sober. I was making a conscious decision to get sober. And that put a whole new value and a whole new perspective on my sobriety because it was something that I wanted to do. Yeah. And it was hard. You know, I didn't go to detox. I detoxed myself and I started to really work on myself and I got back into action right away. I just did what I did the last time. Yeah. Go ahead.
And it's so great that you're talking about this because there's just so much shame that surrounds, not for everybody, for a lot of people, over relapse, you know, and then they never come back and they don't want to talk about it. But you don't lose what you've learned. And like you said, you knew what you needed to do and you're able to get back up and do those things. Like, what do you say to someone out there that is living in shame and they don't want to come back into the rooms and they don't want to take that new chip and they're just sitting and wallowing?
So when it comes to shame, relapse is not anything to be shameful or feel guilty or embarrassed about. Relapse 9 times out of 10 is going to be a part of recovery. Yeah. You see relapse happen more often than not, right? All you do is you get up and you get back on your feet and you just keep going. Yeah. Right. I had a sponsor tell me, that's the same sponsor that told me about the sharing too. I remember getting a sponsee and then the sponsee ended up relapsing. Right. So I didn't get to take her through all of her steps. And I was really upset about it. And she told me, she said, Brittany, don't be surprised when they leave. Be surprised when they stay.
Yeah. Powerful.
And that's kind of like just managing my own expectations because unfortunately, excuse me, I apologize. Unfortunately, statistics are against us, right? Most of us are not going to make it. And a lot of people are dying, right? With that being said, any of us can make a decision to make a change at any point in time. Relapse is a part of my story. I've relapsed, I can't even tell you how many times. But each time that I've thankfully been able to come back, I've learned a little bit more from that experience. And, you know, what really helped me to come back is having people around me with open arms, right? So that's why, like, I always try, if somebody does get loaded or does relapse, we don't shame them. Yeah. We don't close the door on them. We don't make them feel bad. You did exactly what you're programmed to do. Yeah. That's what we do. Addicts and alcoholics, we drink and we get loaded because we don't know how to cope. We have a thinking problem, right? We have a disease that centers in our mind, talks to us in our own voice. It wants us dead. It'll settle for drunk and loaded, right? And people don't have tools, right? So if you're sober and you're trying to do this recovery thing and you're told different suggestions, you're given suggestion, you are given tools to use to help you cope and stuff. But if you're not utilizing those tools, what do you think you're going to do? Yeah. We have a living life on life's terms problem, right? I have a Brittany problem. I don't have a drinking and using problem. Drugs are my solution, right? Drugs are the solution to the problem being my head, right? So if I remove my solution, which is my drugs and alcohol, what do I have? I have a sober addict. Yeah. That's what you have. You have a sober addict with no solution and no fucking tools.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where I think relapse happens a lot of the time, is because people, they don't know what to do. There's no sense of a defense, you know, and that can also be I don't know if I want to say controversial topic, but I mean, there's a number of tools that you can use. I'm an advocate for Alcoholics Anonymous, so I'll always reflect back to that because that is what's worked for me. But through my recovery, I have also learned that just because that worked for me, for the type of addict that I am, doesn't mean that something else won't work for somebody else, right? Like I've known people that don't do Alcoholics Anonymous, but let's say they are super involved in their church. Right. And that works great for them. And they are able to stay sober that way and live a happy, manageable, normal life. Right. Yeah. So that's just what I go back to. But it says in the book, you know, we are like the man who touches the hot stove, swearing that it's never going to burn me again. Oh, it won't burn me this time. So here's how. Right. What kind of thinking is that? That's fucking insane thing. Of course you're going to get burned. Of course you're going to get burned. You know, it's just like the jaywalker too. The jaywalking analogy. Yeah. You know, you think of a jaywalker, he's crazy for jaywalking consistently, and first he breaks his leg, and then he breaks his arm, and then he breaks his back, you know, and we're thinking like, dude, you're fucking crazy. What are you doing? Why do you keep going out and jaywalking? And then the final time he goes out and then he's completely crippled, right? How do we describe that thinking? Is it really that different from an addict? Yeah. Not so much. Not so much. Just replace the jaywalking with using. Yeah. You have all these consequences. The broken limbs are a consequence. Our lives are crumbling and falling apart beneath us. So why do we continue to get loaded? Why? Yeah. And that's the baffling question. Yeah. So what have you done different this time that you've really noticed from the other times? This time I have absolutely no reservation whatsoever that I can ever get loaded again. And that alone, never again, used to give me crippling anxiety just to hear it, because a lot can happen forever, right? From now for the rest of my life. There's still plenty of time there. And I know wholeheartedly that if I get loaded again, everything will go back to the way it was instantly. My misery will be refunded at the door instantly. And this time around, I worked on me and healing me and being okay with me. And in healing myself, I've been able to build a life and surround myself with people that actually care about me, because I'm able to care about me. Yeah. And if I'm able to care about me, then I'm also truly able to care about somebody else, right? I've done a lot of soul searching on this journey. I've had to really acknowledge my character defects and really make it a point to work on them too. And they still present themselves in my current relationship, and I do my best, you know, to manage them. And when I'm wrong, promptly admit it, right? Yeah. Even as humbling as it is. I think that's so important. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Because, you know, character defects can lead us to resentment. People let us down all the time, and we let people down. You know, it's just how people are. You know, it comes with the territory. But I'm not really doing, I guess, like a whole lot different versus last time, other than really healing. How I took that time to actually heal inside. But just getting into action because the program was working for me before. Yeah. The only difference between now and then was I stopped doing it. So there's my problem. Yeah. If I don't stop, then I have a defense and I'm okay. You know, the book says we have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Right? Contingent. Daily reprieve contingent. That means I have to be making sure on a daily basis that I'm right with God. Where am I at with God and who am I helping? Yeah. On a daily basis. Right. So you have that consistency. You have your routine. Yeah. That's what you do. What does your life look like now with your kids, your family? Oh my God. Gosh. So my life today is pretty amazing. I do freelance modeling. And I want to talk about your fitness journey too. Yes. It's super inspiring. Yeah. Fitness. Oh my God. Fitness consumes my life. That is my therapy. That is my biggest outlet today. I've been going in the gym for a number of years now. Actually, when I was with that gentleman that was getting loaded and I decided to get sober, the gym was my outlet. I won't say any names. Some people that may be listening may know who I'm referring to. But that was my outlet, right? And I couldn't sleep. I was so stressed. I was so worried. I was consumed with anxiety. But I knew I needed to stay sober. And so I'd go to the gym, and I discovered that if I worked out hard enough and I destroyed my body hard enough, that by the time the day was over, I was too exhausted to be worrying as much as I was, and I was able to sleep, right? So I love that. And my disease kind of manifests itself in the gym as a result. I wasn't really sticking with my nutrition at that point in time. I didn't really know anything about it at all. So I was literally just going to work out just to work out, like just for my mental health.
Yeah.
And then I got introduced to a trainer about a year ago, and he put me on a nutrition plan, which I followed, and I ended up doing I experienced my first prep, and which was a total another humbling, amazing experience in itself. Like that was hard. And
how long is the prep for?
I prepped for 4 months.
Okay. Can you tell people what that means?
Oh, prep means prepping for my first fitness competition or for a fitness competition. So that means I have to stick to an extremely strict diet.
Because that, a lot of people say, is way harder than going to the gym and lifting weights, right?
You know, I did not realize the effects that like sugar or peanut butter or like bread,
all the good stuff.
Yes, all the amazing things. The effects that has on your brain and on your body until I went through prep. And gradually I was depleted. I was 154 pounds when I started that journey, and my stage weight was 126.
Wow.
So I lost all of that within a 4-month span. And it was an amazing experience. I can't wait to do it again. I was hoping to do it this year, but due to a series of events, I don't foresee that happening this year. Next year might be a little bit more realistic for myself.
Very cool.
I don't know how I managed to complete the semester of school, the spring semester. I did it, but I definitely had prep brain. And prep brain is when you're so depleted, your body is so depleted, because you're essentially just relying on protein to get through your day. My carbs were gradually eliminated from my diet. And when you get to a point in terms of like your bodily nutrition and being malnourished, because you kind of borderline walk that path, you get your brain gets very foggy. And God bless my family and my fiance for dealing with me,
because it's a lot, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
It was a lot, but definitely worth every bit of it. And fitness is just where I go. It's my self-care. I get up at 3:30 in the morning so I can go work out before everybody gets up. And that's like my self-care, my me time, you know, and if I miss it, I get restless, irritable, and discontent.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for people to hear that, because I always preach like, okay, you get sober, you do these things, but you have to find something you're passionate about that's for you, that you love. Yes. That's going to really give you that like satisfaction, you know, and all the things you're talking about. Yeah. So what was it like getting on stage for the first time?
That was an adrenaline rush too. I honestly felt like I was going to fall on my face in front of everybody. I was going to be that one that walked up there and like tripped and like surfed all out to the judges. It would have been hilarious. And then I would have hoped somebody would have recorded it or put it on TikTok or something. That didn't happen though. Thank God. But I did it, and I walked through that anxiety and I walked through that fear, you know, and it literally 60 seconds. I was on stage for maybe 60 seconds to do my little posing routine and then go off to the side. And I ended up not placing where I was hoping that I was going to place, but I was totally fine with that.
Yeah.
I was upset at first, and I let myself be upset at it for a few minutes because I'm selfish and self-centered. And don't you know that I was supposed to win first place? But you know, I held on to that for maybe just a couple of minutes, and then I started thinking in perspective, like God has never given me God has never handed me anything, right? Anything that I have in life, I've had to work for. And why would he just hand me first place on the first time? I mean, that'd be great.
It's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
But I was able to tweak my perspective in that regard. And so I'll just go back stronger and do it again and work harder. And it's not necessarily just for winning. I mean, winning's great, right? Everybody does like to win. But I actually like the journey and the process and the growth that I get out of that. And I'm also learning to accept me for me and the body that I have and being okay with the body that I have.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing that I think a lot of people, men and women alike, you know, especially with social media, and social media is not real.
It's not real, you guys.
Yeah, not fucking real. You get to see on social media a point of view or perspective that somebody that is controlling that social media wants you to see.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I just read a quote, I'll send it to you, but it was saying something about like, you look at this, you know, profile of me on social media and you think that's my life. And some parts of it are, but our real life, our private life is totally different.
I saw you post. Did you post it?
I think I posted it.
Okay. I might've seen it because I remember seeing something like that. And that's so on
true.
point.
Yeah.
And it's so easy for people, especially the younger generation, to not be aware of that.
They're not.
And they think that social media is real, and it's really not.
Yeah. I have a 15-year-old son and he's 6'4", 190 pounds. So he's like huge for his age. And he's constantly judging himself. And it's so sad, but he gets on social media and he's looking at, you know, guy fitness models. My ex-husband, his dad was, you know, in that whole scene, and he's just constantly judging himself. And it's so tough. I'm like, Ryder, that's not reality.
Yeah.
Like, that's not real life. But yeah, we do it. And to be able to get to a point for us women to embrace who we are and love who we are. And some of it comes with age and some of it comes with experience. And really with just doing the work.
Yeah.
You know, like that dark, hard, painful work that we have to do, you know, to come in acceptance. And I struggle with it still every day.
Yeah.
You know, like weight thing is a huge issue for me and it always has been, you know. And
I can relate to that.
Yeah. But being able to struggle, but still feel good about yourself, you know, because we're all going to struggle, and just being like, oh, everything's fine. You know, I know I'm good. Oh, I don't look at myself. It's like bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, we all go through it.
You're fine, fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
Yeah. Ding, 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 ding.
Like, that's me. That's me. I can relate to that.
What do you say to people out there that start on this fitness journey and then fall off? Because you see that often.
Oh my God,
like,
just get back up.
Just
get back up and keep going.
Yeah.
Right. Progress is progress, no matter how big the step. Right.
Yeah.
And there's times that I fall short too. Everybody falls short. But if you stop, then you failed.
Can you say that one more time? The progress is one more time. Let's hear it one more time.
Progress is progress, baby steps or big steps.
Yes.
It's all going to be progress no matter what. Right. But when you stop and you give up, then you are making no progress.
Yeah. And
then you have absolutely no chance at succeeding.
Absolutely.
Even if you keep trying, at least you have a shot.
Yeah, exactly.
You go, you do it, you fall back, you get back up. I mean, I struggle with that with my diet all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
And like, especially during prep, and like when I got down to the weight that I was, like, I wish that I could stay that weight forever. I hadn't been that weight since I was strung out on methamphetamine.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and but I learned quickly, like, even though, I liked that body weight for me, that was not maintainable.
Not maintainable, yeah.
Absolutely not maintainable. It wasn't healthy. And I wasn't thinking straight. I couldn't, like, extremely malnourished, right?
Yeah.
You're not meant, when you do a prep and you go into peak week, like, that is not meant to be long term.
Right.
That is just supposed to be for that time so you can compete,
Yeah.
right? But I really wanted that weight. And then the scales started going up as I'm eating more and, you know, I'm getting carbs back in me and I'm getting food and fuel in me and I'm building muscle. Like, that was a big trigger for me. Like, oh my God, I'm gaining weight. Oh my God, I'm gonna get fat. Like, what's gonna happen? Like, I always go and I do meth so I can manage my weight. Like, what am I gonna do? You know, and this thing just starts going and going and going. And I have to take a minute and just be like, just chill.
Yeah.
How important is it really?
Yeah.
How important is it compared to my serenity, my emotional sobriety, right?
Yeah.
And so it's challenging for people that don't know how to identify that. That's how my disease talks to me. But for people that, you know, may fall off or, you know, start going and then they give up or they don't think they can do it, consistency is the key, man. Sometimes my head even tells me that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not making any progress. You're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to be successful. You can't do this.
Yeah.
I can go on and on and on about what my head says. But I just don't listen to it.
Yeah.
And I go anyway.
Yeah, because 95% of it is just showing up.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
really. Yeah. So I love your journey.
Thank you.
It's so
Thank you.
amazing.
There's a few other areas that my life is pretty rad. So I do work in treatment. I also work for a nonprofit called Hope Fiend.
Okay.
And what we do is we help people that are new in recovery or that are trying to get sober. We help them get the materials or the tools that they need so they can reintegrate back into society. And that's an amazing family that I am truly blessed to get to be a part of.
I love that.
Between clothing, apparel, social media, all of that is used to be able to help these people get started on their recovery journey.
That's amazing.
And it's definitely something beautiful to get to be a part of.
Yeah.
And then my kids are great. I am a full family of 5. I got engaged last December to a lovely gentleman that is sitting by me.
Hi.
And I've been with this man for going on 7 years now. And we will get married October of next year. We actually just locked in a date.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, I even if I have to drag him by his ear, he's coming. And, we are a family of 5. I have my 2 daughters. He also has a son. So we have a 15-year-old, a 11-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And man, do they keep us on our toes.
Yeah.
And we are busy, and it is chaotic, and it is wild, but it's beautifully organized chaos.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have my life any other way. I never got custody back of that little girl that I shared about in the beginning, but I get to be a mom to her today. And ironically, my sobriety date is her birthday also. I didn't plan for it to be that way, but that's just kind of the plan that God had for me. And my sponsor likes to tell me, well, hopefully that'll light a fire under your ass to keep that date, right?
Yeah.
And it does. And I get to be a mother to her. And she calls me today and she talks to me about things today. And she wants me to be in her life today, and I give all the credit to God, man.
Yeah.
God has seriously blessed me in more ways that I could even begin to count, right? Literally living a life beyond my wildest dreams, a life that I do not deserve. And how I got here today and how I'm sitting here talking with you and talking recovery, like recovery is my passion. I love recovery. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love carrying the message. I love being able to give back what was so freely given to me. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so open about my story, because I know a lot of people aren't. Maybe they're not comfortable or whatever their reasons may be. But if we can spread awareness to people out there that don't want to ask for help, don't know how to ask for help, don't know what to do, where to go, where to turn, they feel hopeless, they feel alone. You are not alone. Yeah. There's so many of us out there, and there is a solution. There is a solution. There is another way. There is something that you can do to make a change. And there's people, we can't take any trials away from you, right? We can't take any pain away or any past trauma or any, fears and insecurity. We can't take that away, but whatever you have to walk through, we can walk with you through it. Yes. Because that's what the fuck we do around here, right? We walk with each other and we carry each other, right? So we don't have to do it alone, and it's going to be okay. I love to think that the world is going to spin off of its axis most of the time. My sponsor likes to tell me it's not going to spin off its axis. It's going to be okay. The world is not going to end. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. And again, that's just this thing. Yeah. So
thank you for being a voice, of course, and recovering out loud. Thank you. I was going to say, what would you say to somebody out there suffering? But I feel like you've really touched on all of it. Is there any final words you'd like to say to someone out there?
Anyone out there that's suffering, do not stay silent. Reach out. You can reach out to me.
Yeah. Where can people find you?
People can find me at Sinnful Official on Instagram. That's SINNFUL_official. You can also find me on the Hope Fiend page as well, which is HOPEFEEN. I can be reached on either one of those sites. And, we can help you. Reach out. Do not be afraid to reach out. Do not remain silent. People are dying. I had a counselor tell me in treatment, Brittany, your life's in a state of emergency. You're going to get busy living. You're going to get busy fucking dying. The choice is yours, and people are dying. Yeah. So don't sit and not say something. And then one day it'd be too late, because everybody out there, any addict, alcoholic, everybody, even if you're addict or alcoholic or not, we are all worth a chance. We are all worth it to change. We are all worth it to give ourselves that chance. Give yourself the chance to actually live. I don't mean just exist, because we're all existing, but fucking living. Yeah. And you're worth it.
You just gave me God bumps. You're so rad. Honestly, thank you for inspiring us today and lifting us up. You need
course.
to be doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Seriously. Yeah. You're a force. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.